Hello and welcome. My name is Megan Shanker-Fulcher, and I'm the Assistant Director for Women for Madison. I organize and run webinars like this one, as well as local and regional events. Women for Madison is a diverse network of JMU alumni, family, friends, members, students, faculty who engage women and share the opportunities and needs of the university. So we encourage connecting with one another, with university leaders, and with JMU's exceptional professors and students. Our members invest their time, talents, and resources, and one of our most impactful things we do is to provide scholarships at JMU. So far, we've raised $1.8 million and currently have 27 students attending JMU with our scholarships. We are working toward exceeding $2 million by the summer of 2025. So you'll hear later from Kenny Campbell, Associate Vice President of Constituent Engagement and Executive Director for Women for Madison, about our philanthropic endeavors. Women for Madison believe in the power of connection, education, and action. Our mission is to create a nurturing network where everyone can find support, learn from each other, and harness our strengths to make meaningful changes, not just locally, but in the wider world. Today, we have an awesome webinar that you're going to be hearing shortly. And without further ado, I'm going to pass this mic to Janelle Brown, who serves on the Executive Advisory Board for the Women for Madison.
Thank you, Megan. As Megan said, my name is Janelle Brown. I am on the EAC for Women for Madison, and a step below that, I'm on the webinar committee. So a few months ago, we were having some conversations and talking about self-care and caregivers and wanting to put on some programming that we thought would be helpful and impactful. And I recall the conversation that I had on a bus from the winery at the Women for Madison Summit last year. And I met a fellow JMU grad, another woman from Madison, and her name was Susan Geoghegan. And she started telling me a story about her family and 6 children and caring for them. And it was both an inspirational and sad conversation. And when we continued our conversation about caregiving, there was no one else that I thought would be a better fit for this conversation to come and present to us this evening. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Susan. Thanks.
Thank you, Janelle. It was definitely, I feel like it's a JMU thing to like meet people on buses around Harrisonburg. So yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. This is an honor and a privilege to be here. I'm so excited to be sharing my story with everyone. Had you told me a few decades ago that I would be doing a talk for JMU Women of Madison, I wouldn't have believed you at all. Picture it, Harrisonburg, 2002. I'm a freshman on the 8th floor of Eagle. At the time, it was the tallest building in all of Harrisonburg. I don't know if that's still true now. Someone will have to let me know about that. But I was so quiet that my hallmates didn't actually realize I existed. It took a little bit of time, but eventually they realized I wasn't the girl across the hall who just was very loud. I was the quiet one in the elevator. I believed that if I stayed focused, stayed the course, I was super shy. If I did all the right things and checked all of the boxes in my color-coded planner, that I would get what everybody strives for. You know, the great career, the husband, the 2.5 kids, the white picket fence, the whole nine. I learned a lot from JMU, lessons from professors, from books, from friends, from let's call them shindigs. I learned a lot about myself. I found my voice. I ended up making the best friends in the entire world. I understood and learned about the importance of holding doors for someone, even if they're 10 feet behind you. And I learned that Thursday is the best day of the week for grilled cheese sandwiches. I graduated with a degree in communications and a minor in marketing. And after college, I went on to work in sales while also running my own successful event planning business. All of the planning was paying off, literally. I was being paid to plan for people. It was like, you know, an overachiever planning person's dream. Like, they're going to pay me to do this for them. Weddings, engagements, business conferences, shindigs again. Things were going as as I expected. In 2010, I met Michael, and 3 years later, we got married. Everything was falling into place. Pinterest perfect, all that I could have hoped for. In 2015, I found out that I was pregnant. Again, I did all the right things. I remember walking out of my first OBGYN appointment with a pink tote bag and overflowing, folders with papers telling me what to expect because I was expecting. It was basically a syllabus for a typical pregnancy, which meant they were speaking my love language. They were spelling everything out and telling me what was coming. So I took all the vitamins, I cut the caffeine, I watched what I was eating. I passed all of the tests, I guess you could say, and my pregnancy was as close to on paper perfection as it could possibly be. I mean, my college roommate told me halfway through, like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant too. Our due dates were 1 week apart. So of course our girls were going to both grow up and become besties and go to JMU and live on the 8th floor of Eagle. It had to be, right? I had been waiting for the call back on my blood work to confirm the basic testing that they do halfway through the pregnancy. And I vividly remember where I was when I got the call. The glow of the white fluorescent lights hit me as I was walking past the CoverGirl aisle at Target. I stopped digging through my purse to find my phone right before I missed the call. And as I glanced around at 27 shades of pink nail polish, the lady on the other end of the phone told me, your test came back, everything's fine. I have a core memory of hanging up the phone and thinking, of course it's fine. God wouldn't give me a sick baby. I've done all the right things. Who did I think I was? Let me introduce all of you to mitochondrial disease, the powerhouse of all plot twists. I would probably need a minimum of 14 webinars to answer the question, what is mitochondrial disease? I will save you all of the research and the super science that my husband would share because he has coped through this process with research and I have coped with pie. But let me quickly summarize. My daughter Lorelai arrived 3 months early with a ton of medical complexities. Midway through our 77 days in the NICU, we received a diagnosis, mito. More than likely in your educational career, you have at some point created a model cell. I did a very scientific study with an Instagram poll that proved to me that most of you made your cells out of cake, candy, Jell-O, or the tried and true styrofoam ball. I had gone with a styrofoam ball and it sat in my closet of my childhood home for like 25 years. And I'm not even joking when I tell you that my mom tossed the cell like a month before we got the diagnosis. So within that styrofoam cell, you'll find the mitochondria. Mitochondria are the powerhouses of our cells. The mitochondria are how we produce our energy to grow, develop, function as healthy living creatures. Now, let me set the scene. The first time I heard the words mitochondrial disease, it kind of sounds like a joke, but when a chaplain and a geneticist walk into a room together, it's never going to be great news. So in this quiet conference room, 2 brand new bewildered parents sat across from the head neonatologist, the top geneticist, a social worker, of course, the chaplain, and a handful of medical students and residents who were on the edge of their seats waiting to see what it was like to give bad news to new parents. Science and the doctors that sat across from me with very serious expressions on their faces told me that Lorelai had something called FBXL4 mitochondrial disease. I was sitting with incredibly intelligent, brilliant individuals who were top in their fields, and they are telling me that they have no idea what to do due to the rarity of Lorelai's disease. I learned that she was the 31st documented case. I assumed they meant at CHKD, at that children's hospital. Oh no, they meant like in the world. I was told in that same conversation that my daughter would probably never walk, talk, or eat by mouth. I was told that it is a 25% chance of any future children also having this disease. And the icing on the cake was that I was told Lorelai would have a 2 to 5 year life expectancy. And just like that, my overly planned, thoughtfully prepared future imploded. My my extent of medical knowledge prior to Lorelai was whatever I learned watching Grey's Anatomy. So not much. I went from running my businesses to running an ICU in my home. I went from creating pages of wedding day details to pages of medications, times, and doses. I went from working on sales pitches for my marketing clients to advocating for the care that my daughter needed and absolutely deserved. I went from spending my time surrounded by happy people celebrating life's biggest milestones to quarantining at home before it was a thing in 2020, but quarantining home alone to protect my severely immunocompromised daughter. I learned how to use life-saving equipment. I learned what to do when my child stopped breathing. And I learned how to change a feeding tube when the border collie sprints through the room and gets tangled in the tube and gets it pulled right out of my kid's belly. It happens more times than I'm proud of. After 8 years as a very successful wedding planner who loved doing what she was doing, I closed my company, not only because there was zero time, not only because there was very little qualified help to care for my baby who had all of these medical complexities, but I also realized at that point in my life, I didn't really care what color bridesmaid's dress we were all arguing about at that time. Instead, my entire life around me was changing, and I was turning into a caregiver around the clock. I learned how to act as a nurse, a doctor, a physical therapist, a speech therapist, an occupational therapist, a feeding therapist, an advocate, a teacher, and all of this on top of being a first-time mom too. I didn't like it, y'all. This was not my plan, but my priorities were shifting because they had to. I struggled to find myself during the beginning of my caregiving chapter. Heck, I still struggle to find myself throughout this journey as a caregiver. I struggle as I watch my friends continue to live the life that I thought we would all be living together, doing all of the things that I thought our kids would be doing together. I struggle because this caregiving journey is a very dark, isolating season. And as much as I tried to plan and prepare, I never saw this coming. Now, before I turn the story around, because that's what these talks are supposed to be for, right? You're supposed to like come out with the positive lesson at the end. I'm here to tell you that sometimes life just sucks. I know that the organizers are probably like, oh my gosh, where is she going? But sometimes things are just really hard. And I'm not going to be one to sit here and dish out toxic positivity because that is not my style. We are all thrown curveballs, really, really hard curveballs that sting when they hit you. Whether that's that you unexpectedly became a caregiver for your child, your partner, your parent. Maybe you lost a job that you felt was just destined for you and it just felt so good. And now you're scraping to figure out how to make ends meet. Or you're dealing with overwhelming anxiety or grief. It is okay to sit in this experience and feel all of these emotions. Just like just like life, this talk can't jump straight to the final lesson. It's okay for us to be angry and frustrated and devastated. You're allowed to go and shout at the ocean and tell the universe how incredibly unfair it is. But at some point, we have to accept that a lot of things are simply out of our control. We can choose to stay in the dark place, or we can choose to change the narrative. as we were coming to grips with life as a rare medical family, a rare medical family with brand new parents who didn't know what the heck they were doing, we had a terrifying prognosis and a very unknown future. We found ourselves in the hospital in the pediatric ICU more often than any family ever should be. In 2019, I found myself back in the NICU for the second time, more often than any family should be, when my son Benji was born. Benji also has mitochondrial disease, so thank you for that, science. Being a caregiver is hard. Being a caregiver to two is hard. It's like Groundhog Day in our house. The days are long, the nights are long. There is constant care needed all the time. We live our lives revolved around medication schedules, feeding schedules, nursing schedules, like when the nurse and the help is going to come, when we have hospice coming and going, when we have therapy appointments and doctor's appointments. I live a life in constant hypervigilance, waiting for the next shoe to drop. But together, with a lot of research on my husband and a lot of grief pie for me, we were able to learn how to navigate our way through this new medical system that we were thrown into. You know, when we were dropped in the NICU, we didn't even speak the language, so to speak. We didn't know what was going on, how this place worked, nothing. It was like we were in a foreign country and we had the wrong guidebook. We learned how to cope. We learned how to grow in this unexpected journey of parenthood, how to rely on our village when we really needed support, even when we're unable to ask for it, which I will admit, I still struggle with that. We knew that our children would never become anything per society's standards of what we're all supposed to do and be and become. So I wanted to make sure that their stories, no matter how long or short they may be, would bring as much good to this world as possible. So I used my public relation and organizational communication background to join boards and create committees at the Children's Hospital of King's Daughters to make this place better for our children and for their caregivers. I used my event planning background to throw incredibly creative float for a Mito Cure fundraisers. I didn't want to just do a 5K. I am not into running, but if you give me the option to sit on a river and float and raise money for mitochondrial disease research, I can't do anything in a lab to help my children, but I can plan a really good event. So that's what we did. And before I opened my nonprofit, we raised almost $140,000 just from my family throwing these unique fundraisers. We spent our children's birthdays volunteering at places like Ronald McDonald House and collecting books for the NICU mamas and dadas, because it's so important that they're able to read to their baby's bedside. And throughout all of that, I began to watch my community, a community that I didn't know existed before this, and watch what they were all going through. I saw my village step up for me, and I realized that not everyone in this community had that kind of support. Not everyone was able to change their narrative or find their value or their worth while they navigated this season as we did. So in 2022, I created the Apricity Hope Project. I could like feel my face lighting up because I'm so proud of what I'm doing. We are a nonprofit based in Norfolk, Virginia, that empowers, encourages, comfort, and restores the caregivers of medically complex children. I'm so grateful for all the organizations and all of the support for the children like mine who have been going through really big battles. But I've realized that there isn't enough support for the moms and dads who are also up all night with their child who is crying in pain, who spend all of their days in and out of the hospital. So the Apricity Hope Project offers restorative retreats, hospital go bags that are fully loaded and are available in the ICU for caregivers, and even seasonally sent out care packages that are like boxes of hope that are personalized. So it's like a best friend is sending you a gift, because my best friends, who you will meet in a minute, absolutely stepped up. Somewhere in this journey, I learned that I was a really great medical mom. It was like a switch flipped, and I realized that I could do this. I was finally able to find joy and be present in the moments that I had with my children. Um, but I can also say that I've learned so much from my children, more than I could have learned from a textbook or a professor or a viral TikTok for that sake. I realized that so much is out of my control. And then I made an active decision to just keep going, no matter what life threw at me. But being a caregiver has taught me that real growth doesn't happen when we're comfortable, not at all. If you want to know what's really uncomfortable, it's surrendering all of it, not knowing what to say a lot of the time, realizing that you can't fix anything and that you're learning about love and hope and strength and fear and grief and flexibility from your children as they fight for their lives. Most people assume that I was grieving for my daughter and later my son, and I absolutely was. But I learned that we can also grieve for the people that we thought we were going to be, the things that we thought we would be doing, the futures that we thought we were going to have. It's okay to mourn for what we lost, even if it didn't really exist. I've learned how to communicate and support people as they go through their really hard chapters. It's important. I realized after watching a lot of interactions over my own story, I realized that it's important for us to ask questions like, how does that make you feel? Rather than telling them how they should feel. I've learned that it's never a bad idea, ever a bad idea to show up with coffee or pie. No matter what their love language is, no one is ever going to feel less loved or less seen if you show up with caffeine or dessert. It just helps get you through knowing that people are rooting for you. Even if it's door dashed, totally a good option. I've also learned to give up-ish planning my future. I finally gave up-ish planning when my plans for my daughter's perfect death at home didn't happen. My sweet Lorelei passed at 5.5 years old in the ICU. It wasn't how I wanted it, and it definitely wasn't what I wanted. I was convinced she was going to beat the odds and they were going to name the disease after her. And that if she was going to pass, it was going to be at home, surrounded by her family, with her golden doodle by her side. But Lorelei did it her way. On a holiday, in the hospital, when we were supposed to be on vacation, she taught me how to give up planning. And she also passed during Hurricane Elsa. So, I mean, if you're going to be 5.5 and trying out new angel wings, Hurricane Elsa is your jam. It was not what I expected, but it really was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. So there's Benji. He's going to be 5 in June. My husband and I feel like we're just holding our breath, waiting until he gets to 5.5 where she was. And then I don't know what happens. So I'm not here to burst your, I promise I'm really fun at shindigs. Like I sound like, I mean, Janelle met me on a bus and, but I promise, I'm not here to burst your bubble and tell you that one day you are going to have 2 terminally ill children with a rare disease and epic hair and bright blue eyes, because really, like, how could that happen to both of us? What are the chances? But I am going to tell you that something will happen. Something will pop up out of nowhere. Your plans will fall apart. It could be as simple as a coffee date or as huge as learning that your spouse has cancer. It could be a vacation that has a canceled flight, or it could be losing that job that you loved so much. And you're going to have to ask yourself how you are going to handle that change and how you're going to navigate and narrate your story. I wish I could tell you the end of my story, but here I am, an exhausted, unpaid executive director to a brand new nonprofit that is part bereaved mom, part medical mom, still in the trenches. I actually brushed my hair and put a little makeup on today for the first time in a really long time. I'm not going to mention the pajama pants that I have on below the screen though. None of this was my plan at all. but I'm so grateful for every plot twist and diagnosis that's gotten me here today. Before I turn things over to the panel for discussion and Q&A, I wanted to conclude with one more thing. When naming my nonprofit, I really wanted to find just the right word that captured feeling two opposite things that can be together at the same exact time, but without blending together. Grief and sorrow of this experience. I'd be lying if I said that there has not been so much grief and sorrow, but there's also been so much beauty and love and magic. So the word that I found was apricity. And apricity means the warmth of the sun in the winter. I know first-handedly that being a caregiver can be a really cold and dark, isolating season. But I also know that beautiful, hopeful, indescribable feeling when the rays of sun hit your face on that cold day. Thank you for letting me share my story and my beautiful kids with you. I think any mom can agree that talking about your kids is the best thing ever, but especially when I have one in heaven and one on earth, it's just so, so special. So thank you for giving me this platform. I want to introduce two of the people that have really been incredibly supportive for me over the last, I'm going to say decades, but specifically we're focusing on the last 8 years as a caregiver. My college roommates, Christen Thurston and Amanda Rogers, are both here. And I'm going to let them do a little quick intro if that works for you guys.
Good evening. My name is Christen Thurston. I graduated from JMU in 2006 and then again in 2007. And I work as a medical speech language pathologist. And I met Susan back on the 8th floor of Eagle Hall when she was the quiet girl and my roommate was the less quiet girl, and I got Susan confused for my roommate. So those hallmates who got confused about who Susan was, that was me. I was those hallmates. But it all worked out.
Hi, everybody. My name's Amanda Rogers. I also graduated from JMU in 2006. I am a licensed professional counselor and friend to Susan and Kristen for a couple of decades now, which is crazy to say, but so thankful to have both of them and have had their friendship for 20 some years.
Now, I think someone is going to take the floor, right? Take the mic.
Yes. Thank you so much, Susan, and thank you so much, Kristen and Amanda, for coming tonight and sharing your story. We have some questions, and we'll also open it up to any of the participants in the webinar. There is a Q&A button down at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions that you would like for us to ask the panelists, please write them in that Q&A. So our first question, Susan, is going to be for you. How do you balance holding two really difficult things at the same time, like grief and celebration?
Eating a lot of pie. It is not easy, and I'd be lying if I said that it happened overnight, because it didn't. It was a really long journey for me to get where I was, of that day that the switch flipped. And I also had a lot of PTSD, well, still have a lot of PTSD, but shortly after the NICU, a lot of postpartum depression and anxiety. So learning how to work through that and then finding moments to just be present was really important. I think, unfortunately, but fortunately, losing Lorelai has taught me how to hold grief and joy at the same time, because now I can sit with Benji and be so present. And I don't think I was quite as present with her, if I'm being completely honest, because I was just so struggling to balance all of it. So a lot of pie, a lot of patience, and a lot of support from my village.
I think with that being said, a great next question is, how do you let people help? And then Amanda and Kristen, if you can speak to, sort of what do you do to help in a situation like this?
How do I let people help? I feel like I should let Kristen take this one first because she's going to completely rat me out and be like, she doesn't. Um, but I think in general, that is also something that caregivers have to learn because we're so busy actively taking care of our children or our spouse or whoever it is that we are caring for, that we never think about ourselves. And so I had to have friends. It was like an intervention. So, I mean, like Kristen just showed up and she never went away. So it, that's the only way I let people help. And now, unfortunately, my therapist will agree that when I get to the bottom of like my energy tank, that's when I often go, okay, this is when I need help. And I would recommend to any caregivers out there, just make a list of things that you need done or that you need help with, because when you are in the middle of all of this, whether it's emotional, physical, etc., you're not going to remember the things that you need help with. So when you have a list, you can just hand it off to someone else. And I basically did that with my friends. So Kristen, you want to tell them?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, a lot of the times when you are going through really hard moments, like right after Benji was born and Lorelai was also sick. Susan and I don't actually live close to one another at all, but I tried to be really cognizant of the fact that she has no energy to be available for me or think of things for me to do for her. So I need to take that off of her plate and I need to come up with tangible things that I can do, be it me clearing my schedule for a day and saying, hey, I can come down and I can either walk your dogs for you, do your laundry for you, go to the grocery store for you and prepare some meals and put them in your deep freeze. These are all options. Pick something, but I'm coming. Or I can text her on a regular basis when she's in the hospital with her daughter and say, don't forget to drink your water and take your medicine. And now she mentioned that in one of her podcast episodes, and I think she has a million people reminding her to take her water, drink her water every day. But really just being consistently after her and making sure that she knows I'm here for her no matter what, even if she can't respond, even if she doesn't have the energy, time, bandwidth to respond and tell me how to help. I'm going to come up with ways that I am able to help, even if it's from afar. And even if I'm just texting her and saying, hey, I'm thinking about you. I know you probably can't answer me, but just know that I'm available when you are.
There's definitely something to be said about taking the emotional burden off of the caregiver and saying, you don't have to respond. So that I think is very helpful. It helps you feel seen and loved, and it takes that extra, oh my gosh, now I have to respond to that person off of the plate.
Amanda, I don't know if you wanted to jump in on this question too.
Sure. I mean, I think it's a similar answer, but I think something that Susan's really taught me as a friend for someone who's, a caregiver is actually just telling her what I'm going to do instead of, again, asking her because she doesn't have that bandwidth. So, hey, I am going to come clean your house, or I am going to bring this dinner by. I'm just going to leave it on your porch, but I am going to do these things. And you basically can't say no. I mean, you could, but I'm just going to do it anyway. But that's like one of those other things that she doesn't either have the time to respond or the bandwidth or think of one more thing or make one more decision. And I, as a friend, just trying to take that away from her and do something tangible for her, as Kristen said.
Man, I think that's such a poignant statement that you just made. She doesn't have the capacity to make more choices, right? And so whether you're going through this situation of being a medical mom, or you're caring for your small children and then your aging parent, it's just the mounting number of choices and decisions that have to be made, right? And so someone coming in and offering to offload a small decision like, here's what we're going to have for dinner tonight. You don't have to think about that, right? I imagine it's just a great relief, even if it's just for a second. And, Susan, another one of the questions we have for you is with the complexity of becoming a medical mom of Lorelai, and I feel like you said the statistics that the doctor shared with you was there was a 25% chance that any future children could have the same disease. How did you make the choice, to continue to grow your family?
Yeah, this was a big decision. We did not take this lightly. And I had told my husband, like, we can't consider having another child until we are 100% okay with having two disabled children. And at the time, like I said earlier, I was convinced Lorelai was gonna be the one that helps them find the cure, and that they were gonna name the disease after her, the cure after her, and that was gonna be how it was. And either way, though, whether she lived a longer life or not, we had to be prepared to have two disabled children just in case. So we thought long and hard about it, but in the end, it just felt like somebody was missing. And I think a lot of moms can understand that feeling. Like, my husband didn't fully understand that. I was like, I just feel like somebody is missing. And Benji was the missing piece. And I will tell you, I cried more when I found out that he was a boy than I did that he had Mito, because at that point I was a girl mom through and through, Disney princesses all the way. And I could handle Mito. I didn't know what to do with a boy. But now he is such a love bug, and he is exactly what was missing from our family. And the bond that, this is where I'm going to get emotional, but the bond that he and Lorelai have is something that no other humans could ever understand on this planet. I know that she still is looking out for him and playing with him and showing up for him, but it was not a decision we took lightly, but I wouldn't change anything.
So I have a question specific to Amanda, based on your profession. Could you talk a little bit about self-care, kind of beyond what a lot of people think of as like massages and brunch with your friends? What do caregivers and kind of really all busy women need to be doing to help take care of themselves?
That's a loaded question, but we can try to make it a little bit smaller today. I think just taking from Susan, especially as a caregiver, we have to think about how time constricted we are to begin with to care for ourselves. And I think that's really the big thing that gets in the way, as well as guilt, possibly, probably, for taking care of ourselves when we're trying to take care of others. So I think if it's something as little as, I think Susan said this quite a bit, as taking a shower or brushing your teeth that day, those things have to count for caregivers. But I think it's something that if we don't focus on daily, and it really does need to be a daily thing of even 5 minutes a day of doing something for ourselves, as little as taking our medicine, taking a shower. I'm not saying that everyone should exercise like your doctor always would say, you got to get out and exercise and you're going to feel better. But there is something to be said for literally walking outside for a couple of minutes, or even just breathing air outside, because it affects us physiologically in a way that is helpful for our bodies. So I think anything that we can do that is truly self-care, that's even small, is really, really important for caregivers.
Great, thanks, Amanda. I'm going to pause here and take a question from the chat. And if there's anyone listening, feel free to put additional questions in the Q&A. We will read them as they come in. And the first one is, how can university students like us contribute to your organization, Susan? Do you host daycares that let parents have days off? Do you take volunteers, etc.? How can we get involved?
Absolutely. We do not host daycares. That is way too much liability for me, for a bunch of medically complex kiddos. But I do. I'm actually looking for interns if anybody needs an internship. But we have several universities and organizations that have hosted what we call hope drives. And I have lists available of, for lack of a better word, ingredients that go into our hospital go bags. And we have the CNU, Christopher Newport University right here, recently did one. And we filled up hospital go bags thanks to all of the things they raised. I have lists of items that we need. We do take volunteers. So what I didn't say is that my daughter is pure magic, and 8 months into being a nonprofit, we somehow got a hot pink beach house as our headquarters and retreat house. And so we have volunteers that come to our house in Norfolk and help clean before and after retreats. They help make meals. They help pull weeds, things like that. So we are always in need of volunteers. We are in need of items for our go bags. And my email address can be shared if anybody wants to check in. I would love the help.
So I just also have another question for Amanda and also Christen. The friendship that you've had with Susan over all the years from you through her dealing with this situation, this medical situation with her children. How is that, or has it had an impact on your personal life and your professional lives? I just was curious if you could chat about that a little bit.
I'll start if that's okay, Amanda.
Yeah.
So I mentioned earlier, I work in the hospitals, and a lot of my job is I work in the neonatal intensive care unit. And I think, being friends with Susan and especially watching her perspective from such a close friendship level of day to day, the things that were happening with Lorelai while she was in the NICU really helped me to reframe how I talk to parents and how I talk them through, hey, this is what this alarm means, and this is why I'm not concerned about it right now. Or when this happens, this is when you should be concerned. Or, hey, you're going to notice something a little bit different about your baby this morning. Don't be concerned, but I just want to let you know, because before you see it, it could be alarming. So I always think of Lorelai when I walk in the room, and I always think of Susan and what she was thinking. And then I just really try to think about just the trauma that the caregivers, the family members of my patients are going through, and sit down and meet them where they are. And I think I'm much better at that now, having seen it through Susan's eyes.
I would say professionally that I have learned that it's okay to not have a response and not know what to say. As a therapist, you train and you really are supposed to have a response, or at least feel like you kind of know what to do next in really difficult situations. And I've been in a lot. But there have been so many times over the last 8 years where I would say to Susan or Susan and Christen, man, I really don't know what to say. And that's okay. I think that was better than putting your foot in your mouth, which I think is also easy to do in these situations where you don't want to create any harm by saying something just because you need to fill the gaps. I think personally, it's helped me be more mindful of my own children. And, when Susan was talking, our daughters were due within a week of each other. And so when I look at my oldest daughter, I always think of Lorelai. And my daughter thinks of Lorelai too a lot. So it's just one of those things in your life where you really focus on being in the moment and being a mom, and understanding that it is really a gift.
We have another question from the participants. Susan, do you have an Amazon wish list that you can share, or any
do.
like a
I'm
website?
multitasking right now, pulling it up.
Yep.
So I will.
We're gonna put them in the Q&A chat.
Okay,
Amanda,
great.
can I follow up on something that Susan mentioned? She shared this term toxic positivity when she was speaking, and I imagine for many caregivers that's the thing, right? It's the people consistently saying, well, it could be worse, or let's look on the bright side. You know, can you share some of your thoughts around how to deal with toxic positivity?
I think it's great to be direct in those moments. I mean, but that's not helpful. And I get, I would, people are usually not coming from a place of hurt, or like, trying to, their intent is not to hurt. But like that toxic positivity is also just not helpful. So I think just being very direct with people and being like, this is not helpful, but what would be helpful is, you could even, if you want to go that far, you're not obligated to go that far with your response. But if you want to really educate them on, hey, this is what would be helpful, or kind of what I'm looking for, but that wasn't it. It's really okay to be direct.
I think a lot of people really don't know what to say. Amanda, I think you were talking about this a little bit earlier, and I think sometimes it's okay to also just say, this is really hard. I acknowledge that what you're going through is really hard. I'm sorry that you're going through this.
Right.
And
That's
sometimes
just
that's what
simple.
people need to hear.
Right. That's simple validation.
Right.
Simple validation.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that these two have been, out of all my friends, and I know there's probably a few who are listening, but these two have been like my rock through all of this. And it's because we have like the annoying Marco Polo thread, and I'll go missing off of Marco Polo for like 4 days, and I'll get the, Suze, I just need proof of life. Like, just check in. Like, I haven't seen your face. Or I get the, hey, I'm so sorry that you're having a really hard day. I'm here, like, sitting with you. I'm not going to say anything to try to fix this because there's nothing that can fix this. Or they'll say, just like all of us do when our husbands are driving us crazy, do you want us to help fix this? Or do you want us to just listen? And I think that that is helpful no matter what situation people are in. It's just a helpful way to help people feel seen.
I think we just have time for one more question from our participants. What are a couple of things that you could give us examples of that that we could do to help a caregiver or a family member of a parent who live far away?
Starbucks gift cards. And I say that semi in jest, but really, like, escaping my house for 5 minutes to go through the Starbucks drive-through, even if Benji's in the back of my car, is my outlet. Like Amanda said, I don't often leave my house to get fresh air. My husband goes to and from work, and I stay home all day with Benji, and just getting out sometimes. So, and if you don't live nearby, virtually walking together, like having a friend be like, hey, I'm going to go walk around my neighborhood. You go walk around your neighborhood. We all have technology for a reason. So we may as well like use it. I think what Christen does has been incredibly impactful. She does not live near me, but especially right after Lorelai died, I would get a good morning text that said, good morning, drink some water. And when I would go to bed, she knew to start like texting around 7 p.m. because I was like going to bed early, and she would text and say, don't forget to take your meds, because I needed that. So I think little things, if you're not close by, just reaching out. I know that my friends have very busy lives too. And I know that I can't be the friend that I want to be for them right now because I'm in such a tough place. So I think being aware of that on their end, they don't expect a lot out of me. They don't require a lot out of me, they're just there to love me from a distance, and that's exactly what I need.
Susan, thank you so much for sharing your story and for your thoughts and insights. Amanda, Christen, thank you all also for chiming in. I think we're wrapping up and are out of time for questions. So from here, we're going to transition over. Megan, if you want to take the reins. Or I'm sorry, Jessica.
Actually, I'm going to jump in.
Oh,
So again, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. I think this was very enriching for all of us. And Susan, I think all of us will keep you and Benji in our thoughts and prayers as you go through the rest of this with giving you good vibes and hope. So I would like to introduce Jessica Elgin, who is the Associate State Director of Federal Advocacy and Outreach for AARP Virginia. And most importantly, she has a lot of experience with caregiving. She will take a moment to talk about some statistics in Virginia regarding caregiving and a few resources the AARP can offer. Thanks, Jessica, for being here today with us.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for taking some time out of your, busy schedule this evening to, hang out with us. As mentioned, my name is Jessica Geoghegan, and I want to kind of highlight something Susan said, that, something happens and you never know what is going to happen. And my personal caregiving journey started suddenly on my 27th birthday when my mom was diagnosed with an advanced stage of breast cancer. And it kind of set things into a completely different whirlwind than I had expected to experience at the tail end of my 20s. But I think what I really want to highlight is that, as a family caregiver, you're not alone. As the statistics show here, there's almost 1 million family caregivers here in the state of Virginia. Nationally wise in the US, there's about 48 million family caregivers. And, as Susan mentioned, family caregivers provide a lot of time annually, and a lot of this time is unpaid and purely given because we have to do it. And so here in Virginia, those family caregivers provide about 920 million hours, and that estimated economic impact of that hours is $14.3 billion. And so family caregivers spend a lot of time, they spend a lot of money, they spend a lot of resources, they spend a lot of their energy on caring for their loved ones. And a lot of times it can cause folks to, reduce their working hours, quit their jobs, and, even limit the social interactions that they have with the loved ones and the people around them. And so I think it's important to highlight some of the resources that are out there for family caregivers that exist. Next slide, please. Perfect. So we have a website that is purely geared towards family caregivers, wherever you're at on the continuum of caregiving, whether you're just becoming a family caregiver, you're caregiving for someone from afar, you're wanting to provide assistance to a loved one from a distance, if you're caregiving for a child or for a loved one or for your own parents, such as myself. Our caregiving webpage can help you find local and online resources that may be useful to you. That webpage can be found at www.aarp.org/caregiving. And at the bottom of that page, you can find your Caregiving Resource Center, which will have all of the resources that I'm about to talk about and way, way, way more. I do want to highlight that these resources are completely free and that you don't have to be an AARP member to access them. You don't have to be over the age of 50 or 65 or anything like that. And I found some of these resources, personally useful in my own life. Some of the resources can include things like our Prepare to Care guide, which offers great tips on how to create your own support group. As it's been mentioned today, having a support group is really important, and sometimes it's hard for us to, find that jumping off point conversation to have with the folks around us. And so there are tips for creating that, tips for talking to folks around you. In that Prepare to Care guide, there's also, medication management checklists, contact lists, tips for organizing important documents, and of course, information on caregiver self-care. We also have free financial workbooks that will help you kind of track your caregiving costs, your individual caregiving costs, so you can better understand your out-of-pocket expenses. And this can also help you when filing your taxes and looking to take caregiving tax deductions. You'll better understand what expenses you have taken. As we've talked a lot about, self-care is super important. And so on our website, we have a variety of books that caregivers can order on meditation or adult relaxing coloring books. And we also have online support groups through Facebook, because I know as a family caregiver, having the ability to talk about my experience and be surrounded by other people who understand what I am going through, and just kind of the additional struggles that I've experienced has been very helpful. So also having other community support groups for others is the reason why we thought to create some of our Facebook pages and our online websites. As Susan mentioned, caregivers provide a lot of medical needs to their loved ones. And so we have medical how-to videos as well on there. The last thing that I want to highlight is that while AARP also offers, resources and platforms to assist caregivers, we're also working to support caregivers at a federal and state level. And so one of the things that I do is I work with our volunteers to advocate at Congress and at our General Assembly level for legislation to get passed that actually assists caregivers, things such as paid family leave, tax credits for unpaid caregiving expenses, support for respite care, and a whole heck of a lot more. I appreciate you guys for letting me take a couple minutes to talk about some of these great resources. If there's anywhere you want to look, please take a look at www.aarp.org/caregiving. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Susan, for sharing your story.
Hi, everybody. My name is Candy Campbell, and I am with the Women for Madison program and also oversee the constituent engagement area of JMU. And I just want to give a special thanks to our amazing speakers tonight. It was incredible to hear your stories, and also to thank our Executive Advisory Council moderators from Women for Madison. And thank all of you all for attending. Women for Madison is committed to bringing quality programming to JMU and also celebrating the stories of our amazing network of women. We also support students, and I just wanted to tell you a little bit about that. We do this via scholarships at James Madison. We are committed to getting students who cannot always afford or meet the required financial needs to attend JMU, and we fund scholarships to try and recruit those students to come to JMU and share the Madison experience that we have also had. So we're going to put in the chat the Women for Madison website so that you can visit us, and you can also hit this QR code. But if you're interested in participating, you can become a Women for Madison scholarship supporter in many ways, whether that's just becoming a Woman for Madison at the $100 level or doing a more intentional investment for the Amethyst Circle. So please check out our link and let us know if you have any questions, and reach out to any of us on the website to answer any inquiries that you might have. Thank you again so much for attending tonight.
Thanks, Candy. If you don't mind, as I move to the next slide for the upcoming events, if you don't mind putting that into the chat, the Women for Madison website, that would be great.
Absolutely.
I just want to share 2 events that are coming up. We have a Women for Madison is hosting a tea party during reunion. So it's an intergenerational event. And there's that'll be a lot of connections between students, faculty, alumni, and friends. We're going to actually have a local historian share a bit of JMU history as we connect over traditional English tea. And the link can be found in this QR code, as well as on our website that Kenny's putting in the chat underneath the tab for attend events. And we also have an upcoming Women for Madison rally, which is on Saturday, May 4th. And that is actually a regional event. It'll be in Portsmouth, Virginia. We have summits. We'll have a summit next year, but this year we have a rally. It is with our keynote speaker, Angela Reddix. She is a entrepreneur, and we're going to rally for Women for Madison, JMU, and student scholarships, and help celebrate the grand opening of her latest venture, the Mustard Seed Place. And again, that QR code will link you to the registration. And last but not least, please definitely follow us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram under the handle Women for Madison. And this QR code connects to our Linktree event, where you can find all of our events, stories, and news about Women for Madison. So I just want to take a moment to thank you for coming this evening. We hope you enjoyed it. And thank you so much to our speakers and moderators tonight. And I wish you a lovely night, everyone. Bye-bye.